Cool. All right.
Oh, cool. Well, I think you have my slides, Andrew.
Do I? Oh, okay. Sorry. Apologies.
It's all right.
It's the first time Asmita and I have done a something together, so we should.
Bear with us, guys.
Yeah.
Hopefully, won't be. Should be good though. But look, I just want to say, look, welcome everyone. This is really great that, small group, which is good. And hopefully we'll get a lot out of it, because I think, when it's a smaller group, you feel more comfortable to ask questions and things as well. So we'll try and make it a bit interactive, which is good.
Yeah, I love that when you can kind of get a group of people together. There we go. Okay.
So welcome everyone. So today I would just like to introduce Andrew, who will be running through this session for us. Basically, I've started a community group called the Tech Leadership Experiment. The reason for the naming is that, leadership is a bit of an experiment. You've got to try something, see if it works for you. Sometimes something that works for your colleague might not work for you or your team. So the idea of all of these sessions is just that we get different specialists in to help share ideas. We can build a bit of a community, and eventually it will help our tech industry sort of develop and get, a little bit bigger and better, and grow in the future, because it's one of the fastest kind of growing industries that seems to sort of be touching into operations and marketing and every other area within a company. So Andrew has very graciously given his time to us today for this discussion, and I think it's a really important one. I personally have led teams where, all of the time, because you want to be there to support your team, you don't even know where the day goes. And then at the end of the day, the things that I've committed to people that I will get done don't get done, and I end up staying up late at night trying to finish my own personal work. So when Andrew said, well, what about this topic? I was like, yes, please. I think any sort of manager leader will get a lot out of this. So I guess I think if we could just hit the next slide, Andrew, I'll head over to just a quick acknowledgement of country. I think it's important that we pay respect to elders past and present, even though we are online. And if we could, next slide as well, would be good. Thank you. And then just as a reminder, if everybody could, follow us on LinkedIn, because that's where we will be posting upcoming events through. It's just the Tech Leadership Experiment. And then also we've just got a next topic after this one, which will be hosted by Kendra Vant, and she's going to be talking us through a book that she has high regards for, by Kim Scott, and the book's called Radical Candor. You don't have to read the book to join, but she's just going to be taking a couple of the really good learnings from that and talking through how she's applied that through her career. Now, Kendra she's worked at all kinds of companies. Xero is one of them, ones that come to mind. She's also worked at Seek, and she is one of the thought leaders in AI. So a lot of what she'll be talking about will be, very relevant to us, because it's very future driven, future setup, and then sort of how we can become leaders of the future as well. And I think that was really all. I think I've got one more slide. So we also have a few partner communities that we work with. Tomorrow is International Women's Day. So one of the partner events is her Found Her events. And so Found Her is a group of females who have founded or want to found, or just have their own decide situation going on. There is a breakfast with some very inspirational women speaking just in the city in Melbourne. So if you're Melbourne based and would like to come along or know somebody who would get a lot out of this, please do feel free to share this. The event is tomorrow morning. However, registrations will be open until late tonight. So there is a code where you would get a discount to come along. And yeah, hopefully we'll see some good people there as well in person. But without talking too much, I will hand over to Andrew, who's going to run us through how we can, yeah, I guess, juggle leadership and having our own outcomes.
Yeah. Awesome. Thanks, Asmita. I actually really like that book, Radical Candor. I do, as much as Asmita's right, you don't have to have read it. I heavily recommend you read the book anyway. It is a really, really good book. Cool. All right. I like to start these things. If you ever come along to one of my talks, you know how I like to start this, but I like to do it by telling a story that humiliates me at the beginning. And I do that for a couple of reasons. The first reason is when you kind of look at all of the research on trying to teach things, having a humble person kind of talking about the topic really helps people resonate with it and understand why it's important. The other reason I do it is so that you feel sorry for me and let Asmita know that this was really awesome, and she hopefully invites me back. So that's why I do it. So the story I'm going to tell is when I first got into leadership. I had the misfortune of getting into leadership really, really early. By the time I was 24 years old, I was running a team of 10 people. I don't say that to say, wow, aren't I awesome for running a team that young? I actually was a very, very bad leader. I made a bunch of mistakes. I was not good at the job at all. And one of the biggest mistakes I made was what this topic of discussion for the next 30, 40 minutes is, which is my own time management. Specifically, what I did was because I was the domain expert, I knew about the software, I knew about the business. Every time one of my team came to me and asked me a question, I would just give them the answer. I would spoon feed the answer. I would tell them exactly the line of code they had to change, exactly where they had to change it, and exactly how they had to change it. I felt like I was being helpful. Looking back on this with 15 years of leadership experience, I can see I wasn't being helpful. I was actually making myself the nexus of all information in this team and not empowering them to find the answers to their own questions. And what this actually resulted in happening is I was so busy that I didn't even have time to have lunch. I would be sat at my desk eating my lunch and constantly fielding questions from my team. One of my team eventually realized this and gave me what they and I thought was an appropriate solution, which is they made a little paper hat that I used to wear. And the paper hat used to say, Andrew is on lunch, do not disturb. And every day at 12 o'clock, I would put this paper hat on. I would enjoy my 1 hour of silence. And then at 1 o'clock, I would take it off again. And I saw this as a perfectly appropriate solution to the problem of being bothered by my team. Again, looking back on this with 15 years of leadership experience, that was completely not the right solution. But we have to learn these things. We have to make these mistakes. We have to go through this pathway of learning. And I hope that some of the lessons I'm going to share today will help you not make the same mistakes as I made. Okay, let me start a screen share. Awesome. All right, so yeah, we're going to talk about balancing your IC work and your manager work and how that all fits together. We're going to go through why we're even talking about this. I'm going to give you some of my tips, and then we're going to hopefully have some time for some Q&A at the end. This is not a monologue. We've got a nice group here. If you at any point want to ask a question, you want to get clarification, please just either put a chat in in the chat or unmute your mic and ask me a question. My goal with this is not to give you knowledge. My goal with this is to help you change your behavior after you go through this. And the way we move from that knowledge acquisition to behavior change is you contextualizing it for yourself. And in order for you to be able to contextualize it, you've got to ask me questions. You've got to get clarity. You've got to kind of help me help you understand this in the best way possible. So this is not a monologue. I am not going to talk at the camera for 30 minutes. I want you to engage with me as much as you possibly can. Sound good? Thumbs up? Yeah, awesome. Thanks, guys. All right, you're probably wondering who is this random Englishman who is talking at me. If you don't know a lot about me, I'm Andrew Murphy. I've been long-term father of a flock of chucks, or as we call them in England, chickens, and a short-term father of a flock of humans, or as we call them in England, financial burdens. And I love traveling the world, seeing everything, learning about cultures, and that's been something which has resulted in me ending up in this wonderful country of Australia. I love traveling so much. Pre-COVID, I had a goal of visiting 2 new countries every year. I actually met that goal every year from my 20s to 2020. And it sounds impressive, but then you remember that I grew up in Europe, and visiting another country means just driving for a couple of hours. It's not as impressive as it sounds. I'm now back on the track of meeting this goal. In 2023, I visited 4 new countries. So I am hopefully getting back to my goal of 2 new countries a year and making up for what has been missed through COVID. From a professional point of view, I've been an engineer pretty much as far as I can remember. I started writing code when I was 8 years old, and I've never really stopped since then. But I've been doing it professionally for about 20 years. And like I said, got into leadership really early and learned all of those mistakes. For the past few years, I've also been teaching and training leadership skills to companies all around the world, most recently with my own company, Tech Leaders Launchpad, where we focus on this problem that happened to me, where we promote the smartest engineers, smartest individual contributors to leadership positions, and then sit back and watch as they fail. Because the job of being a leader is different to being the job of an IC. And so, you know, Asmita's mission with the Tech Leadership Experiment very much aligns with what I'm trying to do at Tech Leaders Launchpad. Okay, so why am I doing this topic? Well, there was this article that the Australian Financial Review put out about 8 months ago, which basically a lot of companies started what I call the compression of leadership. So as a response to the change in financial climate, the layoffs in various companies, a lot of companies started getting rid of middle management. And so it kind of resulted in this situation where people who are maybe early in their leadership career are in this place where they have to do a lot more IC work as well as leading their team. Now, I could spend the next hour talking about why that's a really bad idea and companies shouldn't do that, but that isn't particularly helpful for those people who find themselves in that situation. And so I wanted to help those people who are in this place where they're struggling with the demands of the job they're in and trying to understand how they balance being an individual contributor and being a manager, be that because it's a hard task in general, or they find themselves in one of these companies that have compressed leadership to the point where it's required. So that's why I put this talk together. Now, the first thought that might occur to you if you're kind of in this place where you're trying to balance leadership and management and IC work is, do I just do 2.5 days a week of IC work and 2.5 days a week of leadership work? And well, kind of, you know, we're going to go through exactly how that works. It's not a bad idea to think about splitting your week up, but it's really doesn't meet the demands of the job. You know, if you've got a job where you have to be responsive to things that are happening, then having this kind of split doesn't really work. So we're going to talk about how you actually do that. And the four ways we're going to discuss today in the next 30 minutes are self-scheduling, conscious decisions on your time, delegation, how that works, and then self-care, looking after yourself. So self-scheduling, this is kind of back to that question of, should I just split my week 50-50? Well, no, but the idea of planning some of your time in is actually really valuable. Having scheduled in your calendar some leadership time or some focus time is incredibly valuable for finding the time within your week to do the things that are important. Often we can find ourselves pulled away from important things by things that are urgent, things that are time critical, things that happen and we feel like we have to respond to them in the moment, this reactive work. And so we can get caught away with this and never get time to focus on leadership time. It can also be the case that we don't want to say no to people. And so whenever somebody sends a calendar invite, we just say yes. We don't want to disappoint people by not giving them our valuable time. And so we just say yes to every calendar invite. What I want to encourage you to do, and this is kind of tip number one, is book time in your calendar for yourself. If you don't have a few hours of focus time in your calendar, then you're not going to be able to work on the things that are truly important. You can do this for both leadership time and IC work, depending on what you need. But generally what happens is we need this for leadership time rather than IC work. The IC work tends to kind of just take care of itself. And so putting this focus time in for leadership work is how you protect this time. Often at this point, somebody says something on the lines of, yeah, I do this already, but people just see focus time in my calendar and book meetings over the top of it. That's something pretty common that happens all the time, especially if you're in a company that has open calendars where you can see everybody else's calendars. They see something that says focus time and go, oh, great, Jessica isn't in a meeting then, I'll put my meeting in then. And it kind of defeats the whole point of having focus time. So what I actually suggest you do is to have a conversation with your boss and say to your boss, I'm going to book a meeting in with you. And if that meeting is called TPS check-in report, you can ignore that meeting. That is just me shadowing the time in my calendar. Because people are much less likely to book a meeting over the top of your one-to-one with your boss than they are with your focus time. And so doing it this way means you can actually protect your time more rigidly than if you just have a calendar entry that says focus time. It doesn't have to be your boss, could be a peer, could be somebody else. You could have a little bit of a handshake agreement with a peer where you're like, we have our weekly check-in, but this isn't actually our weekly check-in. This is both of our focus time. Whatever it is, do this to make sure that you have and protect that time. Otherwise, somebody's going to book something over the top of it. Really important. All right. Next, I want you to think about the idea of conscious decision making, because if we're protecting this time and we're getting this really, really valuable leadership time, how do we make sure we're working on the right thing during that time? Well, I want you to think about the idea of impact in your work. What is actually truly impactful? And that should be what you spend your leadership time on. These are things that we often neglect. These are things that are not necessarily time critical. They're not necessarily urgent, but they are things that move the needle in terms of the longer term objectives of the team, of you, of the business. These are the things you should be doing in that hard-won, hard-protected leadership time. Things such as, to start with, scheduling this time in, making sure you get the time. The first thing you should be doing in your leadership time is making sure you've got more leadership time. And then it becomes a self-reinforcing cycle. The second thing you should be doing, and we'll talk more about this later, is self-care, looking after yourself. Then comes into the things that make a long-term difference to your success as a leader, such as communicating and collaborating with your team, with your peers, with your boss, These are the things that tend to drop off when we feel that we're losing time and we don't have enough time. So focusing on it is important. Also, things such as giving feedback and recognition to your team, spending the time to make them feel heard, make them feel like their work is valued, is just going to give you dividends. Is there anything else somebody wants me to double click on and kind of go into in more detail? Any of those you're curious why they're there? I did say this wasn't a monologue.
No, good. I'm good.
Now this makes sense. These are the things, if you put them in a matrix, they are important but not urgent. So
yeah,
makes sense.
Spot on. Oh, I see. Nav, you're jumping the gun. We are definitely going to touch on the matrix of importance and urgence. I love the fact that you're talking about that, where we will very, very quickly be getting there. So these are the things which we should be doing in that leadership time. Now, things that we can consider moving away and kind of delegating to other people and not doing them ourselves are also really important for us to think about. These can be things such as direct involvement in all technical tasks. We don't have to do a lot of technical stuff ourselves. We can delegate that. If you feel like you can't delegate that, that's actually a problem that you need to fix as a leader. We have to have trust in our team. We have to have trust in their capability. If we don't have trust in the capability of our team, it's our job as a leader to fix that problem. And you know, how you fix that problem depends on your particular circumstance. It could be upskilling, it could be bringing in external talent. But if you feel like you have to have direct involvement in all technical tasks, that is a problem you need to fix as a leader. Another thing we could consider delegating and moving out of our leadership time and giving to somebody else are things such as recruitment, training, and onboarding. These feel like really, really important tasks, and they are important, but they're things that we can actually delegate with appropriate checks and appropriate guardrails. You know, you don't have to be the first person in every single interview. You can delegate that to somebody else, teach them how to do it, get support on them to do it, and then you just kind of come in as a check at the end. Same with training and onboarding. Actually, you know, when you ask a lot of seniors and mid-level people, one thing they really want to do is they want to mentor, they want to help people. And so a good way of giving them that is enabling them to kind of be responsible for onboarding new people. And so, you know, you can actually help them grow and develop by giving them some of these tasks. Another thing you could do along that same line is start delegating team ceremonies. If you run things like retros and stand-ups and other kind of standard team ceremonies, can you delegate these to other people? That allows you to democratize it. It allows you to share knowledge. It allows them to feel like they own the ceremony, and also occasionally allows you to drop out of that and work on something else. So I definitely think you should be asking yourself, do I have to do all of these things? And if the answer is yes, ask yourself the question, how can I get the team to a point where I don't have to do these things? Because that should really be your goal, is all of these things are delegated. Any questions on these ones? Any ones you want me to go into more detail on?
Hi, this is Nav. It is really good, Andrew, the way that you're presenting. Yeah, I just wanted to appreciate before I ask my question. So basically, I was typing in my question as well, right? That so basically, when we go to senior management for asking, by for you know, spare some helping hand from their side and help us how to organize these leadership styles. My recent experience was while I was approaching two people, one person always says that I'm there, I'm definitely try to give you some sort of a guidance on how to schedule the things and all, but he never turned up because of his regular day-to-day work. And there is another person who's always says that you have to find out yourself. There is nothing that I can tell you. So what do you find any good approach of seeking the help from the management or mid-level management to go and talk to them and getting their guidance and those stuff?
That's a really tricky topic. At the end of the day, the management above you is just as, if not more busy than you are. And so finding ways to discuss with them and persuade and influence them is a skill. And it's a skill that you should develop time into learning and practicing. And often it comes down to finding out what they are motivated by. What are their fires? What are their gains? What are their pains? What are their metrics that they care about? And then tying the thing that you want into why it helps them reach their goal, why it helps them improve their metric. There's another talk that I did exactly on that, and I'll share it with you later, Nav. It's on my website. If you go to techleaderslaunchpad.com, on the resources page and then events, I did a talk on influencing business stakeholders on there, and that's got all that stuff, but I'll share that link as well. Asmita, do you want to add something?
Yeah, I was just going to say, I've had a similar experience where someone's like, yeah, I'll help you out. But then, they're always just very busy. One of the things that I found worked for me, and again, you got a trial and error. I actually just started putting in time in that person's calendar for 15 minutes. And, that was then 15 minutes they knew that I had put my hand up. I had asked for that dedicated time, and they knew that that was my time. It did two things. One, it pushed it back on them to say, look, I've asked for help. You're the manager. You need to come and support me here. But secondly, it just also highlighted just how important it was that they sorted it, because they may have felt that wasn't very important, but to me it was. So putting it in their calendar made it highlighted for them.
Great suggestion. I like the focus on that about owning your relationships, and one thing, like the higher you progress in leadership, one thing that you start to realize is you have to own the relationships that you have with everybody around you, be that your peers, your team, or your boss. And a really big skill to learn as you progress through leadership is the power in managing upwards, and the power of getting your leaders above you to help you with the thing. Like that often defines the success when you get further up the leadership chain, how you manage the people who are not your team. Cool. Whoops. So I talked about delegation there, and I want to give you a framework for delegation. So if you're going through this list of things that you could delegate, this is great for the things that I've told you about. How do you make your own decisions? Can I give you a framework that allows you to think about and progress that? If anybody knows who Michael Lopp is, his online pseudonym is Rands. He runs a blog called Rands in Repose, and I do regular live streams, and he's on my live stream this Saturday, actually 9 a.m. this Saturday. And often what I do when I do live streams with people is I ask them the question, what's the phrase that you would implant in every single tech leader's mind if you could? And the phrase that he came up with is delegate until it hurts. And really what he's trying to tell you there is you've got to be pushing the boundaries of your delegation. If everybody around you is doing the things that they're comfortable with, then you're not delegating enough to them. You should be giving them more. You should be growing and developing them, which also means you should be letting go of things you maybe don't want to let go of, because that's the way that you constantly build people, and that's the way that you constantly work towards making yourself redundant, which is, ideally what we want to do as leaders. So here you go, Nav. You will be very familiar with this. You mentioned it earlier. This is what is called the Eisenhower matrix. So this is a 2x2 grid that talks about two words that I've mentioned already, but I'm going to go into a bit more detail. The 2x2 grid and the difference between something being important and something being urgent. Those are two words that feel very, very similar, but they are not. They are not the same. They are very different. Importance is the impact that a piece of work or something has within your organization. How impactful it is how important it is. But urgence is purely about time criticality. It's about the calendar, the days, the hours, the minutes that's happening. So you can have something that is important but not urgent, just in the same way as you can have something that's urgent but not important. So to give you an example, if you have broken production and the entire website is down, that is both important and urgent. But if you preparing a report on how you're going to improve the technical strategy of your team over the next 2 years is important. But if you don't have to present it to the board for a month or two, it's not necessarily urgent. Conversely, we can have things that are urgent but not important. If you've got somebody sending you DMs in Slack, but the DMs are about something that is not particularly impactful for the business, they're urgent because they want a response straight away, but they're not necessarily important because they don't have a huge amount of impact to the business. So understanding that these two are different axes on a matrix is the key to coming up with a way of delegation that gives you a methodology that you can apply whatever the task is. The methodology I'm going to show you right now, it's what I recommend for somebody in their first leadership role. So somebody who has just become a leader for the first time, they've maybe got a small team, they don't have leaders under them, they only have ICs under them. That might not be you, that might not be appropriate to you, but I'm trying to give you a model here and think about what model might work for you. If you have any questions about how it might change, go for it, Mohit.
Just because we are here, and I would like to inform. I'm audible, right?
Sorry?
Am I audible?
Yes, you are. Yes, you are.
Yes, you are.
So, for me, when I was working as a technology analyst back in India, I got an opportunity to work as a project manager for around a year and a half. Okay, so things became very different because when you are in a technology side, but you are being given a business side as well, it became quite difficult for me because I wasn't able to understand this particular metrics. Everything is important from the perspective of the project, and everything is urgent as well. So how as a first timer would you understand what is important and what is not?
Okay, cool. Great question. For importance, I want you to think about impact. I want you to think about the change that this task makes in the business. So what is the state of the business before you do this thing? And what is the state of the business after you do this thing? That change, that delta, tells you how important the task is. If the change in the business is small when you do this thing, the importance is low. If the change in the business is high when you do this thing, the importance is high. To give you an example, if I've got two tasks and one of them is produce a report to show my team how they can get better in their skills, and another one is fix production because it's currently broken and nobody can place an order, they're obviously fixing production has a higher net impact to the business, and so that would be the thing I would work on. That idea of what the delta in the change of the metrics you care about defines the importance. If you can't tie the tasks to a metric that the business cares about, that's a whole nother problem that we could spend an hour talking about. But realistically, if you can tie it towards it, then that's how you assess the importance, the change in the business, the change in the metrics. Urgency is just how time critical it is. If you don't do this thing in the next hour, what's going to happen if you don't do this thing in the next day? What's going to happen if you don't do this thing in the next week? If you don't do this thing in the next month? What is the drop dead date with this thing? What is the point at which this ceases being the problem it is and becomes a whole nother problem entirely? And that's what urgency is.
So from your example, I understand that now, but back then it was very different because there were so many teams involved, and when you talk to a particular team, for them it's always urgent, and
Yeah,
it's also as well as important. So I got
sure.
quite confused in that, and though that 1.5 year was so difficult for me that I did not take up any other leadership roles after that.
That often happens, Murray. I feel for you. So often people have these really bad experiences that kind of make them not want to move into leadership again. It's a very, very common pattern. And I feel for you that you went for that, and I'm sorry you did. Hopefully you're in a place where you're much happier with your role now.
Yeah, thank you.
Awesome. Cool. So hopefully now we get the difference. I'm going to go through a framework that you can use for delegation. So if something is important and urgent, then you need to deal with it straight away. If production is down, there's no point in saying, "Oh yeah, production's down. I'll wait till 9 o'clock on Monday to fix it." No, you need to do it now. The things that are both important and urgent, they don't wait for leadership time. You do them straight away. Things that are important but not urgent, these are actually the things you should be doing in your leadership time. These are the things that move the needle. These are the things that are really impactful for the business, and because they're not urgent, tend to get lost in the midst of the things that are urgent. And so whenever you define something as important but not urgent, that should go on your to-do list for your leadership time. Things that are urgent or not urgent but not important, these make you feel busy, they make you feel productive, but really these are the things to give to other people. These are the things that we should be delegating as leaders, as first-time leaders, to the ICs that work with us. This is what I suggest you start your delegation experiment with. Pass these onto your team, things that are urgent but not important. Things that are not urgent and not important, just don't do them. Checking Facebook, I have this notification kind of armada, this agenda against notifications. I think you should just turn all notifications off on your computer and never have a single notification ever again, because they are distracting, and 99.99999% of them are urgent but not important. Mohit.
Can you give an example of an urgent task that is not important? Because that's quite confusing now.
Sure. So something that's urgent but not important could be something like, a junior is stuck right now. They don't understand what the next task is. They don't understand how to implement the thing that they're doing. It's urgent, because if you don't respond to it, they're not going to get any work done. But if a junior doesn't get any work done for an hour or two, it's not that important in the grand scheme of the business.
Yeah, now I understand. Yeah.
Yeah, cool.
So you said we should delegate these kind of tasks. So how can we delegate this task then?
Sure. So pick some people that you believe have the desire, the capability to do this, and just start asking them if they want to do this. Talk to them about how it's useful for their growth. How genuinely, most of the time, people are really willing to do this, especially if you make it clear to them why it's beneficial for them in their career and their growth. Somebody moving into a senior position, a big expectation of them as a senior is to mentor and coach other people. And so, explaining that to them and explaining how that shows that they're, impactful in the business and they're, increasing in value in the business, you very rarely get people pushing back on that.
So surely we can put some senior resource in action to either train that junior resource. We can also ask them to go through internal trainings, right? Which
Sure.
will reserve our senior resource in that case.
Sure. At the end of the day, what we're talking about here is trying to be conscious about the decisions we make, and being responsive and trying to respond quickly to something without slowing down and thinking about the best response. That's not what we want to do. We really want to make more conscious decisions about the time that we spend. Sometimes that time, sometimes that decision is the senior should help them. Sometimes that decision is we send them on a training course. That's fine. But it's trying to be more conscious about, okay, this is not something I should be spending my very precious leadership time on. So I'm going to find a solution that is not that.
Right. Thank you.
Cool. Okay, cool. So any more questions on this Eisenhower matrix and delegation? Nice. Okay. We're getting close to the end, and so I want to finish on something. Sorry, 1 second. My headphones have just told me that they're about to die. That is the worst possible timing. Okay, can you still hear me? Perfect. That was a perfectly seamless switchover of headset. I'm pretty impressed with that. Well done, Apple. Okay, so last is self-care, looking after yourself. Taking care of yourself is not a sign of weakness or indulgence. Looking after you, looking after the fleshy meat sack that sits in the seat is not a sign of weakness or indulgence. If you don't look after yourself, how can you possibly ever hope to look after your team? If you're not able to cope, if you're not able to support yourself, how can you possibly support and look after your team? And so finding the time to do the things that make you able to do that is not an indulgence. It is a way of you helping your team. If you care about your team, if you care about supporting them, looking after yourself is the first step in supporting them. Doing things such as setting realistic expectations for yourself, trying not to burn yourself out by trying to do too much, seeking support. Shrikant made a great comment about mentors here. I wholeheartedly agree with that approach. Finding people to support and mentor you is a great way of looking after yourself and a great way of supporting your continued development. Another thing is establish clear boundaries between your work and personal life. If you've got bleeding between those two things and really unclear boundaries, it's really hard. And so, making sure that as much as you possibly can, those two things don't collide means that you can look after yourself. I think it's also important to celebrate achievements. I love Agile. I'm a massive supporter of Agile and the true values of Agile, not things like safe. I could spend an hour telling you why safe is a bad idea, but I won't. But one of the downsides of Agile is we don't have these big bang releases that we used to have in the pre-Agile world, and so we forget to celebrate achievements regularly. I heavily suggest that every time you have a small win, you celebrate that, both for yourself, for your team. Make sure that you're constantly, if you're going a month and you're not having some kind of mini celebration, I think you need to reassess that and work out how you can bring some of that in there, because otherwise it can be a hard slog, especially in remote work where you don't see people as much in person. Making sure you take those times to celebrate is really important. And call back to my story in the beginning, make sure you take your lunch break. If you're not having that time to step away from the computer, you're really starting to burn yourself out. I've lost count of the number of times when I've had a really, really tricky problem that I couldn't solve. I walked away from my computer for 20 minutes and suddenly the solution occurred to me. That happens so many times, to the point when I now kind of know when I need to walk away to from the computer, because the solution will come to me when I walk away. Just doing that, you cannot brute force creativity sometimes. and so making sure you walk away is important. Any questions on the ones here that I didn't touch on?
None from my side.
No, cool, awesome. Well, that's it. Thank you for spending the last half an hour with me. We're going to kind of move to a bit of general Q&A before we wrap up. But if you want to know more about me, there's a link to my LinkedIn profile there. Like I said, I regularly do Q&A live streams and discussions with people from around the industry. If you follow me on LinkedIn, you can find that out. If you want to know more about Tech Leaders Launchpad, the type of stuff I do, you can use that link on the left. And the link in the middle, if you want to have a chat with me about anything to do with leadership stuff, and you don't find me at an event and you really want to have a chat, just go to that link and you can just book in 20 minutes in my calendar, and you can have a one-on-one with me if you want to ask me a question that maybe you don't want to share in front of an audience. Cool. So any kind of general questions, anything you want to dig into?
Nope. Thank you so much.
Oh yeah, thanks for that. I definitely have some of the questions, Andrew. Yeah, they are
cool.
Since almost 3-4 years. I guess with whoever that I worked on the management side, I faced toughest people. They have a different style and I have a different style, and the current one which I'm working on is I'm getting the feedback, but that is not empathetic way and that is not a constructive way, which is not helping me at all. Which means that they're asking me in a way that this is your feedback, okay, what I should be doing it, and that is not at all helping me as growing as a leader, because that is not constructive feedback and at the same time not an empathetic way, and which is more of a conclusion way of feedback. This is what it is, that's all. So yeah, definitely it makes sense to me to get in touch with you personally. I already sent you a LinkedIn request, and I'm looking forward to get in touch with you and to know more about these things. And yeah, I've sent you a request already in the LinkedIn. Thank you so much, Andrea.
Yeah, you're welcome, Nav. That's a really tough place to be. There's one thing I can recommend as a piece of advice. Look into the SBI-BI framework for giving feedback. So SBI-BI. And it's a really great framework for giving feedback. But one thing that you can actually do is you can turn it back on the person giving you feedback. If they're giving you feedback that's not actionable, you can kind of turn that framework back on them and use it as a way to get them to clarify their feedback. So, you know, very quickly, it's situation, behavior, impact, alternative behavior, alternative impact. And it's basically just a way of going, what did I do? And what was the impact of that? And what was the thing I should have done? And what do you think the impact of that should be? And turning that back on them and trying to get them to give you more specific, actionable feedback is, it can help. Sometimes people don't know, and honestly, if they don't know, then that's a problem. If they can't tell you that, it's a problem.
Yeah. It's true, right? So basically, they say the result is this, and sometimes they don't even tell us why they think the result is different, and it is hurting us as well, right? We have our own families, and they got their own families. We are kind enough to not disturb their mental mood, but they always like that to disturb someone's mental mood, right? So it's good. So is it a SBI? Is S for
Sierra Bravo Indigo Bravo Indigo.
Oh, sorry, I just missed it. Can you please spell it again?
Sure.
Do you want to pop it in chat?
I have done. It's in the chat, but it's Sierra Bravo Indigo Bravo Indigo. For anybody that knows the NATO phonetic alphabet.
Yeah.
Well done with that. I always struggle.
Thank you so much.
In the UK, as we said, the postcodes are alphanumeric. And so like everybody in the
Delay.
UK knows the NATO phonetic alphabet, because when we have to tell people postcodes, we have to say like, you know, HD6 to JB. And so you have to go Hotel Bravo 6 to Juliet Bravo.
Fair enough. Fair enough.
Thank
There's a
you.
reason for the skill. But thank you everyone for joining us. I'm just conscious of finishing up on time and everything. So I've popped in some LinkedIn links there. I will be sending an email round so that if anyone missed the links at the end of Andrew's presentation, you can follow them from there. And we'll also post this recording in case, you know, you may have been pulled away while the talk was going on. You can go back and rewatch or re-listen. But yeah, thank you again for attending. And look, if you have any topics or any speakers that you you know, feel would be of benefit to yourself, your colleagues, or even just the industry, do let me know. We have got a couple of topics scheduled. I need to just put them up on the site, and more than happy to include, because this is really just about us getting the information for everybody, just so we can you know, improve our industry and all be amazing. Oh, thank you, Andrew. That was the YouTube page, and again, just a reminder, the session with Kendra coming up soon. I'm really quite excited to hear that one. She told me a few stories, and I was like, well, could you do a session for us, which she's going to be doing. So I think that one's going to be really good as well. And then yeah, just look, thank you so much for coming along, making the time.
Yeah, thank you everybody as well. Like I appreciated how much you engaged in this and asked me questions and comments and stuff. That's what I love to see is when people care enough about a topic that they you know, they engage with it. So thank you for that.
Oh, thank you, Andrew. Thank you, Govind. Thank you.
Amazing.
Sure.
That's been the story.
All right. Amazing. Thank you all.
Bye.
See you all later.
Have a good rest of afternoon.